He stood before the cracked mirror in the dimly lit room, the kind of mirror that does not merely reflect, but exposes. The flickering candlelight cast shadows across the walls, making the familiar contours of his face seem foreign, almost grotesque. The man staring back was not him, or at least not the man he thought he was. There, in the hollow of his eyes, lived a truth he had spent a lifetime denying. Weakness. Weakness disguised as pride. Fear dressed as ambition. He had wandered through life chasing illusions of power, believing that charm, status, or fleeting approval could mask the trembling void inside. But mirrors, as Machiavelli warned, are merciless in their honesty. They do not flatter. They do not lie. They reveal. He saw the small betrayals he had committed, unnoticed by others but etched into his own conscience. The whispered compromises, the silent retreats from confrontation, the moments when he let cowardice dictate his path, all reflected back with unforgiving clarity. For every step he had taken forward, his shadow had taken one backward, feeding the emptiness he had refused to name. And then the room itself seemed to breathe around him, dark and suffocating, pressing secrets into the corners of his mind. The air smelled of old regrets, of dreams decayed before they were fully formed. He could feel the weight of every choice he had avoided, every desire left unpursued, because he feared its cost. The truth was unbearable. He had been a prisoner of his own indecision, a low-value man hiding behind the trappings of safety and comfort. A chill crawled up his spine as he realized the danger of this self-awareness. To see oneself clearly is to invite judgment, both internal and external. And yet there was a spark in this confrontation, a forbidden thrill, for in acknowledging his weakness, he had taken the first step toward power. But that step was only the beginning. The mirror had shown him his limitations, but it could not yet teach him how to overcome them. For that, he would have to confront the desires, obsessions, and betrayals that lay waiting just beyond the candlelight. The real journey had not yet begun, and the man in the reflection, trembling, uncertain, yet strangely alert, was about to discover how dangerous knowledge could reshape a life. And in the silence of that room, he asked himself the first haunting question that would guide every lesson to come. What am I willing to risk to become more than what I am? The first step toward power had been acknowledgement, a tremor in the mirror of weakness. But the second step, he realized, would be far more perilous. Desire had a way of chaining a man, invisible yet unbreakable, and he now felt those chains tighten around his very soul. Obsession was no longer a distant shadow. It had crept into his veins, whispering promises, demanding surrender. It began with her, not the woman herself, but the idea of her, the reflection of what he could not have, what he could never fully control. Every thought, every movement seemed drawn toward her orbit, and with each passing hour he felt the subtle erosion of his freedom. Machiavelli had spoken of ambition, of calculated detachment, of keeping desire subservient to strategy. But passion, unbridled, paid no heed to strategy. Passion was a predator, and he had invited it willingly. Nights became sleepless journeys through the corridors of his own mind. He replayed conversations, studied gestures, dissected moments that might reveal some hidden favor, some concealed betrayal. His friends' laughter, once comforting, now sounded like warnings. Their indifference, a dagger to his ego. Even his own reflection seemed complicit in the torment, mocking him with the hollow certainty that he was no longer the master of his own fate. And yet, there was a strange intoxication in the obsession. It sharpened his senses, honed his awareness of nuance, made the world both vivid and cruelly fragile. He felt alive in ways he had never known, aware that desire, when mastered, could be a weapon. But mastery required recognition. The hard truth that obsession could either elevate a man or devour him completely. Few had the courage to confront it, and fewer still survived intact. A sudden knock at the door startled him. The echo bounced down the empty corridor like a reminder of unseen watchers. It was the world intruding, testing the limits of his fixation. He realized, with a sinking certainty, that obsession was not merely a private torment. It shaped relationships, decisions, and even the smallest gestures of power. One misstep could expose weakness. One uncontrolled desire could unravel everything he had fought to conceal. And in that quiet, tense moment, he understood that the chains binding him were forged by his own mind, and only he could decide whether to let them crush him or guide him. The choice was deadly in its simplicity. The obsession, he knew, was just the beginning. Before he could rise, he would have to navigate the masks people wore, masks that hid truth, betrayal, and dangerous intentions. The next lesson awaited, cloaked in shadows. The world was full of faces that lied, and to survive, he would need to see through them all. Desire had chained him, sharpened him, made him aware of every pulse and whisper in the world. But it was only one layer of deception. Beyond obsession lay the masks that everyone wore, faces crafted with intent, shields hiding intent, and lies wrapped in charm. He had glimpsed it in fleeting gestures, in smiles too practiced to be honest, in eyes that avoided his. The world, he realized, thrived on masquerade, and those who failed to see the masks were doomed to stumble blindly. At first, he thought himself clever. He learned to smile, to nod, to echo sentiments he did not feel. He mirrored others like a reflection of their desires, blending into their reality, confident he could control perception. Yet slowly, he saw how fragile the illusion was, how easy it was to misread a mask, how devastating a misstep could become. People do not reveal their true intentions voluntarily. They hide it behind etiquette, charm, or cruelty so subtle it goes unnoticed until it is too late. One evening, in the half-light of a study lined with books, he noticed the subtle play of shadows on a colleague's face. A twitch, a brief hesitation, a fleeting look of contempt. A simple smile could have disguised it, yet he had learned to see the fissures in the masks. Machiavelli had written of manipulation, of power gained by understanding the human heart's secret workings, and now he felt the weight of that forbidden wisdom. Observation, patience, and ruthless clarity were weapons stronger than ambition or desire, but the masks were not only worn by others, he saw his own too, crafted carefully to hide fear, insecurity, and the faint trace of weakness that still lingered after the mirror's revelation. Each mask demanded maintenance, vigilance, and deceit, for the world would exploit any lapse without mercy. And the deeper he descended into this knowledge, the more he realized that power and trust were never gifts. They were illusions, offered only to those who could see through the false facades and manipulate them without hesitation. A sudden chill reminded him of the price of error. For behind every mask lurked betrayal, and behind every friendly gesture a threat. The world was not simply cruel, it was cunning, patient, and merciless. To survive, to rise above low value, He would have to strip away these illusions, expose hidden truths, and confront the treachery waiting in shadows. And in that understanding, a silent question rose in his mind. How much of what he called friendship, loyalty, or love was real, and how much was simply another mask, waiting to fall at the most inconvenient moment? The answer would not wait long. The next step was inevitable. To wield power, he would need to face the ultimate violation of trust, the betrayal that lurks closest to home, the hand that strikes from within, unseen until the damage is complete. He had learned to read the masks, to sense the hidden fissures and faces, and yet nothing had prepared him for the betrayal that comes from within, the hand that strikes closest, the trust shattered by someone who was supposed to protect it. Betrayal, he realized, is not a distant threat, but a poison that grows quietly, inside the chambers of intimacy, loyalty, and love. It waits patiently, gathering strength until it can shatter the foundations of a life. It began as subtle signs, a hesitation in a glance, a word left unsaid, a secret guarded too fiercely. He noticed them first in a friend, someone whose allegiance had seemed unshakable, whose laughter had once been a balm to insecurity. But now, in the dim glow of his study, he saw the truth. Every shared confidence, every vow of loyalty had been a facade. Beneath it lurked ambition, envy, and the insidious satisfaction of watching him stumble. Machiavelli had warned, men are neither loyal nor just without cause, and the strongest fortress can crumble from the inside. The revelation struck like a cold blade. He recalled moments when his friend's advice had guided him into traps, disguised as opportunities, every failure, every misstep, carefully orchestrated, and he had been blind, intoxicated by trust, unable to perceive the quiet erosion of his position. The betrayal was intimate because it was personal. It hurt more because it was delivered by someone he had considered part of his inner circle. Anger surged, but it was laced with fear. Betrayal teaches a lesson no philosophy can soften. Power is never secure, and the people closest to you may be the ones most willing to destroy it. He saw now how obsession had made him vulnerable, how masks had hidden treachery, and how his own weaknesses had invited exploitation. The very chains he had been trying to master were now used against him as invisible hands pulled at the strands of his life with ruthless precision. Yet, in the darkest moment, a spark of clarity emerged. Betrayal, as destructive as it was, offered insight. It revealed the true nature of those around him and illuminated the path to control, the subtle mastery of influence, manipulation, and psychological dominance. Pain became a teacher, and the lesson was unforgiving. To survive, he must see every hidden intention, predict every move, and anticipate every deceit before it struck. In the silence of his apartment, he traced the contours of the betrayal, imagining each whispered lie as threads of a web. The chill of realization seeped into his bones. No one outside himself could guarantee his security. Power, trust, and loyalty were illusions without vigilance. And as he stared into the shadows, he understood the next step would be to seize control, not merely to protect himself, but to wield the invisible strings that governed others. The question lingered, sharp and inevitable. How far would he go to ensure he was never vulnerable again? The answer awaited him in the quiet manipulation of hearts, in the whispered tactics of those who understand that control is both an art and a weapon. The next lesson was clear. To survive, he must learn the subtle dominion of influence, shaping reality without being seen, guiding others while remaining untouchable. Betrayal had stripped him bare, exposing the tender threads of vulnerability that tethered him to the world. Yet in the emptiness left behind, a new awareness began to stir, a dangerous, intoxicating understanding that control, subtle and unseen, could become the most powerful weapon a man possessed. The whispers of influence were not loud. They moved like shadows across a room, unseen yet profoundly felt. He observed carefully, noting how small gestures, carefully timed words, and the slightest shifts in tone could bend others to his will. Machiavelli's wisdom echoed in his mind. Men are moved by fear, desire, and vanity, and the one who understands these levers can command reality itself. To speak softly, to suggest rather than demand, to offer choice while steering decisions, all were arts of quiet dominion, capable of rendering enemies impotent and allies loyal without the need for overt force. Late nights were spent in study and reflection, imagining scenarios where every subtle action could yield maximum influence. He replayed conversations, noted reactions, and honed the ability to anticipate the intentions of those around him. Each small success, the obedience of a colleague, the fleeting admiration of a rival, was intoxicating, a confirmation that the web he was weaving could extend far beyond his personal vulnerabilities. Yet control carried its own darkness. To manipulate, one must remain invisible, untouchable, and perpetually vigilant. One slip, one hint of desire or emotion, and the delicate balance collapsed. The thrill was accompanied by fear, a constant reminder that mastery demanded vigilance, cunning, and a willingness to sacrifice comfort for power. The mind became a battlefield where every thought was calculated, every glance weighed, and every silence weaponized. The danger, he realized, was in underestimating the subtlety of human nature. People may appear compliant, loyal, or content, but beneath the surface they too plotted, obsessed, and desired. To survive, he could not simply react. He had to anticipate, to shape outcomes before they manifested. Only then could he rise above weakness, betrayal, and obsession, transforming every hidden threat into opportunity. And as the candlelight flickered across his study, he understood the next perilous lesson. The cost of ambition is pride, and pride, when left unchecked, can undo even the most meticulous strategies. The very control he now wielded could be undermined by arrogance, by overreach, or by the blind certainty that he was untouchable. The next step awaited, shadowed by a question as chilling as it was inevitable. How much of his success would survive the very pride that now whispered seductively in his ear? He had learned the art of control, weaving influence like threads through the lives of those around him. Yet with every subtle triumph, a dangerous companion crept in. Pride. It was not loud or brash, but a whisper that grew insidiously in the quiet spaces of his mind. Pride convinces a man that he is invincible, that the webs he has spun are untouchable, that no shadow can reach him. And yet, pride is blind to its own fragility. He noticed it first in small moments, a scoff at a colleague's caution, a dismissal of advice, the fleeting belief that his insight surpassed the very laws of human nature he had studied. Machiavelli had warned of this. Hubris is the undoing of even the most cunning, a flaw that transforms mastery into self-destruction. Yet the allure of pride is intoxicating. It offers the illusion of certainty, the thrill of supremacy, and the seductive notion that one's power is absolute. Late at night, He reflected on the victories he had claimed, the betrayals he had survived, the desires he had mastered. Each triumph felt hollow in the shadow of pride, for every success carried the risk of arrogance. A single miscalculation, born not of ignorance but of overconfidence, could unravel the delicate balance he had fought so hard to maintain. The very control he wielded could become a weapon turned inward, striking at the heart of his own ambitions. And yet, the lesson of pride is subtle. It does not announce itself with fanfare. It creeps into decisions, into interpretations of loyalty, into the silent ways he judged others and underestimated threats. Pride blinds a man to hidden motives, convinces him that deception cannot touch him, and that the mirrors he once feared now flatter him. But every reflection, every unnoticed shadow, carries the potential for devastation. In the stillness of his study, he recognized the inevitability of this truth. To rise above low value, to survive betrayal and obsession, one must temper power with humility, awareness with caution. The cost of pride is not immediate, but it is relentless, a slow erosion of judgment that can strike when vigilance wanes. And as he stared into the candlelit shadows, he felt the weight of the next lesson pressing upon him. Knowledge, forbidden and dangerous, lay beyond mere control and pride, a realm where truths are too potent, secrets too dark to be revealed without consequence. The next path would demand confronting what men are rarely willing to see, the truths that haunt, unsettle, and transform beyond return. He had learned the art of control, weaving influence like threads through the lives of those around him. Yet, with every subtle triumph, a dangerous companion crept in: pride. It was not loud or brash, but a whisper that grew insidiously in the quiet spaces of his mind. Pride convinces a man that he is invincible, that the webs he has spun are untouchable, that no shadow can reach him. And yet, pride is blind to its own fragility. He noticed it first in small moments: a scoff at a colleague's caution, a dismissal of advice, the fleeting belief that his insight surpassed the very laws of human nature he had studied. Machiavelli had warned of this. Hubris is the undoing of even the most cunning, a flaw that transforms mastery into self-destruction. Yet the allure of pride is intoxicating. It offers the illusion of certainty, the thrill of supremacy, and the seductive notion that one's power is absolute. Late at night, he reflected on the victories he had claimed, the betrayals he had survived, the desires he had mastered. Each triumph felt hollow in the shadow of pride, for every success carried the risk of arrogance, a single miscalculation, born not of ignorance, but of overconfidence, could unravel the delicate balance he had fought so hard to maintain. The very control he wielded could become a weapon turned inward, striking at the heart of his own ambitions. And yet, the lesson of pride is subtle. It does not announce itself with fanfare. It creeps into decisions, into interpretations of loyalty, into the silent ways he judged others and underestimated threats. Pride blinds a man to hidden motives, convinces him that deception cannot touch him, and that the mirrors he once feared now flatter him. But every reflection, every unnoticed shadow, carries the potential for devastation. In the stillness of his study, he recognized the inevitability of this truth. To rise above low value, to survive betrayal and obsession, one must temper power with humility, awareness with caution. The cost of pride is not immediate, but it is relentless, a slow erosion of judgment that can strike when vigilance wanes. And as he stared into the candlelit shadows, he felt the weight of the next lesson pressing upon him. Knowledge, forbidden and dangerous, lay beyond mere control and pride, a realm where truths are too potent, secrets too dark to be revealed without consequence. The next path would demand confronting what men are rarely willing to see, the truths that haunt, unsettle, and transform beyond return. Forbidden knowledge had revealed the delicate, dangerous threads that shaped reality, but desire lingered in the shadows, more potent than intellect alone. Desire is subtle, seductive, and unforgiving. It binds the mind before the body, chains the soul before the heart. He had seen obsession claw at men's reason, pride blind them to danger, but desire, he realized, was the final arbiter of ruin or power. It was not the longing for material gain, nor the hunger for status, but the quiet, consuming pull toward what is forbidden. He saw it in women, in alliances, in secrets whispered in candlelit corridors. Desire blinds the rational, twists morality, and bends loyalty, until the line between pleasure and destruction is invisible. Machiavelli's lessons on human nature were incomplete without this truth. To master men, one must first master the dark hunger that resides within. He remembered her, the woman who had haunted his thoughts long before he recognized her name. She was not an accomplice nor a challenge, but a mirror to his own obsession. Every encounter with her revealed a fissure in his discipline. Every fleeting touch or glance, a temptation that could undo all progress he had fought to secure. In desire, he saw vulnerability. In longing, he saw chains. The strongest man can be reduced to a trembling shadow by what he cannot possess. Walking the empty streets late at night, he noticed how desire transforms perception. A simple smile could ignite fury or devotion. Words, gestures, even silence became weapons, capable of shaping actions, bending loyalty, or unrevealing schemes. Every subtle signal demanded calculation, every emotion tested resolve. Desire, like a shadow, was impossible to escape, and yet its mastery promised unparalleled insight and power. But there is a cost. To indulge in forbidden desire without control is to risk everything: friendships, alliances, even one's own sense of self. The very pursuit that sharpens cunning can also corrode morality, leaving a man trapped in the labyrinth of his own passions. And yet, to deny desire entirely is to remain weak, incomplete, a low-value man shackled by fear and prudence. In that tension, he recognized the final truth before the ultimate lesson. Mastery is not simply about surviving betrayal, ambition, or pride. It is about walking the fine line where obsession, control, and desire intersect. Every decision, every action, every hidden thought becomes a test of strength and clarity. And as the darkness closed around him, a final question arose, echoing through the silent night. How far is a man willing to descend into his own shadows to claim the power he seeks, knowing the cost may be the essence of his very soul? The stage was set for the culmination, the last revelation of forbidden wisdom, to confront the ultimate truths of human nature and to emerge transformed or destroyed. He had walked through shadows of weakness, obsession, betrayal, control, pride, forbidden knowledge, and desire. Each step had carved lessons into his soul, leaving him both stronger and more haunted than before. And now, at the culmination, he faced the ultimate truth, a lesson Machiavelli had implied but never fully revealed. The cost of becoming a high-value man is not measured in victories or conquest, but in the unyielding awareness of human nature's darkness. He stood alone in a dimly lit chamber, walls lined with ancient texts, the weight of history pressing down upon him. The candlelight flickered, casting shadows that seemed alive, twisting like the secrets of those he had studied, manipulated, and survived. Here, at the edge of forbidden knowledge, he understood that true mastery requires a willingness to accept truths most men cannot face. Power is fleeting, control is fragile, desire is relentless, and betrayal is inevitable. Machiavelli's final lesson was not a strategy or a tactic. It was a revelation of the soul. Men are governed by fear, obsession, and desire far more than by reason. Loyalty is transactional. Love can be weaponized. Pride is a double-edged sword. To navigate life successfully, one must see the machinery behind appearances, predict the invisible forces at play, and embrace the uncomfortable, terrifying clarity that most flee from. Knowledge alone is useless without the courage to wield it, and courage without restraint leads to ruin. He reflected on the faces of those who had crossed him, the hands that betrayed, the minds that schemed, the hearts that desired. Each encounter was a lesson, each failure a mirror of his own vulnerabilities. He realized that transformation is not about becoming flawless or invincible, but about acknowledging the shadows within oneself and learning to maneuver in the world without being consumed by them. The high-value man is not admired or envied for his strength alone. He is feared and respected for his understanding of the invisible threads that bind all men. And yet, the lesson carried a darkness that lingered even in victory. Knowledge of human nature is a dangerous gift. It isolates as much as it empowers. One can never unsee what has been revealed. One can never fully trust the world again, nor oneself. Every choice is weighted with the awareness of hidden motives, and every success is tinged with the potential for betrayal. The ultimate truth was clear. Mastery of life requires embracing discomfort, acknowledging danger, and navigating the fine line between manipulation and morality. As he closed the final book and let the candle gutter in the oppressive silence, he knew the haunting truth that would remain with him forever. To rise above mediocrity, to become high value, is not merely to win over others, it is to confront the darkness within and to carry knowledge that is as intoxicating as it is perilous. In the stillness, he whispered to himself, the question lingering in the air, do I dare live fully, knowing the price of seeing humanity as it truly is? The answer was neither comforting nor simple, but it was unavoidable.